I absolutely love my guest today. She is an amazing thought leader. She's been on stages of the world like TED Talks, Google stage, and she's an author as well of Stand Out and Reinventing You. And we'll be sharing her story today, and also she'll be tapping into exactly how to create your story, how to create a brand, how to create your voice, how to find your voice, and create a following around it. So stay tuned. Welcome, Dorie. Oh my goodness, how are you?
Thank you. I'm great. It's good to be talking with you.
It is. I've been really looking forward to it, and I know a lot of people have been looking forward. They know about you, and they already follow you, but here we're going to tap into your brain a bit. So just for those people that are looking to start a business, or they're a little bit wary about it, thinking where these entrepreneurs come from the sky, can anyone be an entrepreneur? How did you get started?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that anyone can be an entrepreneur. I mean, this is not a question of skills, because you can learn the skills. It's really a question of mindset. And I think that the people who can be a successful entrepreneur are the people who are really willing to push themselves and to realize that they're not entitled to anything by the universe, that they have to work for something. And I think that there are some really interesting studies about the shift that's taking place in the workplace. I mean, certainly it's happening very acutely in the US, but I think around the world we're really beginning to see evidence of this. There's a well-known study by Intuit that by the year 2020, 40% of the American workforce is going to be contract or freelancers, essentially entrepreneurs. Yeah. And so even people who are not literally entrepreneurs, if they want to be successful in that world, they need to start thinking that way and saying, all right, I can't just expect that if I do my little thing, I'll get paid for it. You have to start asking the next question, which is the thing that I do actually valuable in the world? And is it valuable enough that people are willing to pay for it? And if you can answer that affirmatively and you're willing to push yourself, then I think anyone can be an entrepreneur.
It's amazing, Dorie, that you actually touched on this, because it's moving towards the performance, isn't it? Performance-based hiring, and you've got a lot of competition against you. It's about how someone stands out now, isn't it? According to their ability, their knowledge, etc. So it's moving towards that. It's not like just turning up, giving your time, and getting money for that anymore, is it? It's kind of moving to a new economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it actually is a positive evolution. I mean, it's something that is more, quote unquote, dangerous for people who have been able to skate by in the past, but it also has the potential for tremendous reward for the people who really do contribute a lot. I mean, I liken it, if we think of it in the media world, it used to be, oh, well, you'd pay whatever, let's say $500,000 for a commercial on a television show during prime time when everybody's theoretically watching it. But you don't know if people watched it. They might go and go to the refrigerator and get snacks or whatever. Nobody knows. You bought the time and you hoped and you guessed. Now, a lot of advertising online is pay-per-click. You know that people clicked on it, that they were interested enough to say, oh yeah, I want to learn more about that. So it's much more refined. And similarly, when it comes to people and workplace performance, who cares if you were there for 8 hours or 10 hours? It's what you actually do in that time that matters.
That's absolutely fantastic, guys. Thank you. Dorie, one thing I want to play a bit of devil's advocate here, okay, and actually stick up in a way for the people that are questioning about their self-worth of being entrepreneurs. It's the education, Dorie. They've been taught all their lives that they have to go a certain way, and I think that the society is kind of designed like that to keep people in the system and not be free and think differently and think for themselves and grow. So how do you kind of help that? How do you help people understand that they need to be aware of this? Because they might not know. They might not know because that's what they've been taught all their lives.
Sure. Well, it is interesting because it really is a kind of paradigm shift, and it's one that takes a while to trickle down. There's a friend of mine, an interesting thinker, business thinker here in the U.S., a guy named James Altucher, and he he has a podcast, and I was just listening to it yesterday, and he was talking about jobs, the evolution of jobs, and he was interviewing somebody, and he asked them, he's like, well, if there's this movement now. If people are talking about how it is that entrepreneurship is actually, much safer in a lot of ways than just, staying in a company and saying, oh, I want a good job. Why is it that my own 13-year-old daughter is saying, oh gosh, I need to get a secure job? Like, why is it that this myth keeps persisting? And the truth is that it is really, really culturally ingrained, and it's for a good reason, which is that for the past, let's say, 50 to 75 years, the past, like, let's say 3 generations, that's been really good advice. Getting a safe, secure job was good advice because you would get pensions, you'd have a lot of security. There were not the opportunities that we have today, thanks to things like the internet, to really dramatically leverage your skills. If you were a great teacher, all you could ever do is, teach 20 or 50 people at a time, because there wasn't the capability to teach 200,000 people at a time like you can do now on the internet. And so your impact was limited, and so your wages were limited. But it's outmoded thinking. And if we're listening to people who did things that were successful 20 years ago or 40 years ago, I mean, notably what your parents and your grandparents probably think is really excellent advice, that's really no longer the case. I mean, I think about the advice that I got from my parents, and my mom in particular really wanted me to go to law school. That was what she thought would be a really good plan for me. And I think about what would have happened if I had gone to law school. And I mean, it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I would have graduated from law school in the year 2000. Fine, great, high times. You're rolling in 2000. The economy was great. But, all right, let's follow it out a little bit more. Usually it takes about somewhere between 7 and 9 years to become a law firm partner. If I had signed on at a law firm right out of school, and I had said, you know what, I'm going to be a partner, this is going to be my security for life, I would have been coming up for partnership right at the time of the 2008 financial crisis. I probably would have not only not become a partner, I probably would have lost my job, and everything that I had worked for would have really been in jeopardy. And so the things that seem safe often are not.
Often are not. Absolutely fantastic. Now, guys, restream this on Meerkat. Thank you so much for those who have restreamed. Stinson, thank you very much. I can't call out all of them, but thank you. And the people that need to ask questions, hold on. You can ask questions below, or you can actually email me at welcome@ihaveadreamshow.com if you want to keep them private or anything like that. But Dorie, so let's talk about, before we get into questions and things, let's talk about you. I mean, who inspired you? How did you kind of step away from what's being taught and free yourself and actually start exploring what you want to do and how you want to, where did the idea come from of what you're doing, etc.? Just kind of take us back through that.
Yeah, well, I don't give myself much credit, for being prescient or having some alternate vision. Yeah. It was definitely not that. I am doing what I'm doing now because I had the same fixed ideas about what the realm of possibility was, right. And I, early in my career, just had doors shut to me. That was really the reason, and so I had to find something else to do. Right. So, for me, the formative experiences, first, I got a master's degree in theology, and my first thought, I really liked academia, I loved studying, I loved writing, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I thought, I'll be a professor. And so my first, sort of failure, you could say, was that I had applied to doctoral programs and I got turned down by every single doctoral program that I applied to. And so, okay, I guess I'm not going to be a professor. So then I came up with actually what I thought was a pretty good second idea. And I thought, okay, well, what if I'm a journalist? I can still write, I can do interesting things, it'll be, great experiences. That's what I'll do. And I was so happy when I got a job at a cool paper covering politics. I thought it would be fantastic. And I thought, all right, I'll just be a journalist. That'll be a great career path for me. And then about a year into my career, I got laid off. Right. And I couldn't get another job in journalism because that was really the point where the industry started contracting. And in fact, over the course of this past decade, from 2000 to 2010, I'm assuming it's probably the same in Britain, but in the U.S., nearly 40% of American newsroom journalists lost their jobs.
Right.
So you just couldn't get a job. So I said, all right, what else? So because I had been covering politics, I had the opportunity to go onto the other side and start working for political campaigns.
Uh-huh.
And so I became a spokesperson on political campaigns, first for a governor's race, then for a presidential race. And both of my candidates lost. So I was not having a lot of luck.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were good ideas. All of them could have been really good careers, but they were old school careers.
Yes.
Finally, I ended up taking a job after the campaign ended, running a small nonprofit. And ironically, that was the thing that gave me my future direction, because I realized in the course of running this nonprofit that it was exactly the same thing as running a business. And I thought, oh, I know how to run a business now. Why don't I run a business for myself? And that was what kicked off what I've been doing for the past decade.
Excellent, excellent. That's absolutely fantastic. So the people that are watching this show right now, guys, if you feel that you've got this kind of a dilemma where, Dorie, we've got bills to pay, okay? I understand that. People have got commitments. I don't know if people are, parents on this show, they've got kids to look after. And I feel that people are so stuck in that how to make the money, right, that they trap the creativity that's needed to be an entrepreneur. And how do you free yourself of that? How do you stop worrying about your monthly payments, whatever they are, financial commitments, and actually come up with an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a couple of answers to that. I mean, one is that you can never really stop worrying about it. I mean, there's always going to be certain things you absolutely have to do in terms of paying your expenses and taking care of your family.
Yeah.
So there has to be a sort of baseline for it. But there are ways to accommodate around that. And so a few of the things that I did and that I would recommend other people do it. Number one, prior to launching your entrepreneurial effort, I mean, this is not something that you need to necessarily start, today. What I did when I came up with the idea for starting my business was I had this idea that I wanted to do it, and I spent about a year planning for it.
Right.
And so during that period, I read a million books, I took a bunch of classes, and I tried to get everything ready and teed up so that when I did launch, I would have all the knowledge and skills that I needed so that I could do it well. Because if you have not been an entrepreneur, probably literally at this moment, I'm willing to bet that for almost anyone, there are gaps in your knowledge. There's things you know how to do, but there's also things you don't know how to do.
Right.
I didn't know how to do bookkeeping, for instance. That was not something that I had ever really had to do for the jobs that I had, but I realized, okay, if I'm running my own business, I really ought to get to understand that. So, things like that. So you can take a period of time where you're essentially training and planning and preparing, and during that time, you should try to sock away as much money as possible, because you want to launch with savings, because you're not going to get your first client, on day one. There's going to be a lag, so you want to have some money in the bank so you don't have to get desperate. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I think it is really important for entrepreneurs to live below their means. Certainly for the first while that you're doing it, until you really have something that is undeniable and sustainable success. I think that this vision of, I'll be an entrepreneur and I can drive a Maserati or whatever. That's nice when you IPO, but in the early stages, what is actually, I would say for almost anyone, going to make you feel better and happier and more secure is knowing it's not about the things that you're possessing. It's about the fact that you suddenly have autonomy and you have choice. And the more money that you have at your disposal, cash, liquid cash, that you have at your disposal, the more choice you're going to have. So for me, just prior to starting my business, I actually bought my first condo, and or flat, as you would say, and so I bought this flat. I deliberately bought it. It was nice. I mean, I liked it. It was a beautiful apartment, but it was in a neighborhood that, you could say it was an emerging neighborhood. It was not where the cool kids lived. I think that most of my friends had never even been to this neighborhood, and I mean, a couple of years after I bought, the city's largest drug bust in history was literally like almost exactly across the street from my house. It was like tons of heroin and whatever. I mean, it's not like I was living in a war zone. I wouldn't do that,
Yeah.
but it was an area that was not filled with a bunch of yuppies. It was a Latin immigrant area, and the reason that I did that is that I wanted to know that no matter what, I could always pay my mortgage. Always. I could do it in my sleep. And having that confidence allowed me to always make good choices about the projects I wanted to do and the ones I didn't want to do.
Do you know what? I'm so glad you touched on that, because one key area I've learned as an entrepreneur is really simplifying your life down while you're on your journey. Because, just think little things like, having the same meal each day. It just stops you from overthinking on things that aren't important in a way. Does that make sense? Like wearing the same type of clothes, or, I know it's not easy for a lot of people, and, they want to kind of look good in society, but these are the kind of sacrifices the entrepreneurs make, and just keeping your life as simple as possible and putting yourself in a situation where you want to kind of create that desperation to get out of it and move you faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with the wardrobe stuff, I think sometimes it gets a little overblown, in the sense that, like, oh my God, if it's going to strain your brain that much to have the red tie versus the blue tie. but I think that and I think a lot of people who do it sort of do that a little bit more as like a branding thing rather than a decision thing. But overall, I agree with you. I think that that having certain things be simplified is really important. I mean, for instance, lunch, right? Lunch is something that, I mean, you could spend 2 hours at lunch just like going and getting it or cooking it or whatever. And if you just set up a ritual where it's like, I mean, for me, for instance, I live half a block away from a Chipotle, which I don't know if you have that in England, but it's like a like a burrito chain.
Yeah, I love it. It's fantastic food.
Yeah, it's really great. It's easy, it's quick, it's whatever. And so I know, I mean, most, at least 2 or 3 days a week, I will probably just go and grab some Chipotle because I know that it's fast. I know it's easy. I don't have to think about it. I know what I want to order. And also things like that are actually, there are other benefits too. There's health benefits because you don't have to constantly be thinking about, oh, how many calories does this have? Is this healthy? Whatever. Like you know that they if you're eating the same thing and holding that variable constant, and you're trying to lose weight or keep your weight, that's a really easy way to do that and eliminate the guesswork. So something like that can save you time. I'm a huge fan of.
That's fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Now, I'm actually kind of moving swiftly along because I've got so much to cover with you, Dorie. Okay, so, right, now an idea. Okay, now we're inspired by so many things in the day, and you need that kind of level of awareness in a way to understand that you've got an inspiration from somewhere. And I believe that an idea is just a wish if it's not written down. Do you feel... okay, a couple of questions here. How do you manifest an idea, and how do you know the idea that you're having is the right one?
Yeah, so it's an important question. In my book, Stand Out, I actually talk about 3 phases of spreading your idea. Right. And, so basically what I did in Stand Out was I interviewed about 50 top thought leaders in different fields to try to understand how it was that they came to the top of their fields and built a following. And for almost all of them, I discovered that there was really this 3-step process for spreading it. So the first step is what I call building your network. Next is building your audience, and third is building your community. And so this first part, building your network, is the place where, I think some people drop the ball on this a little bit because they have this idea and they think, oh, fantastic, this great idea, I'm going to just share it with the world. And so they immediately start blogging about it, speaking about it, writing about it, all this stuff. That's great, but it actually is likely to be more effective if you do the first part first, building the network. And what this means is essentially assembling a group of like-minded people whose judgment you trust around you. Your kitchen cabinet, your personal board of directors, your mastermind group, however you want to describe it. Because these are the folks that can provide a kind of early gut check about whether they agree that the idea is good. They might see holes in it that you don't see, and they can help you refine it to the point so that when you actually do present it to the public, it's in the best possible shape. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the public is going to love it, but it means that it's as good as it can be at that point. And so I think that that's really the first thing. How do you know if it's a good idea? Well, it's this two-phase process. One is I would run it by your network of people that you trust. And if if one person hates it, whatever. But if all of them hate it, that's probably a bad sign. Right. And then once you surmount that, then you can go out and test it with the general public.
That's fantastic, Dorie. We've got a question coming in. I'm going to take this because it's related. Julie, thank you very much for tuning into the I Have a Dream show. She's asking, I'm quite new. The only people I know is friends and family. How do I create a network of people, of like-minded people, because they don't understand what I want to do? Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a great question. I love that. So, I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it. And, if Judy's typing, maybe she can tell me what field she's in, so I can make it even more personally tailored.
It is. Yeah.
But anyway, just to sort of get started on the answer, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. I mean, just to pick one example, let's say that Judy wants to start a blog or a podcast or something like that. How do you build a network? Well, one really good way to do it is to say, all right, I'm making this up. She's a floral designer. So she says, all right, I'm going to start a blog on floral design. What I'm going to do is I'm going to interview all of the top floral designers in my city to get their perspective about, trends in the industry or, common mistakes or whatever. And so if you say, hey, I have this blog, I want to interview you for it, people are probably going to say yes, and you're going to get to meet them. You're going to make them look good. You're coming in and leading with a favor, essentially, and you'll promote it. They'll have a nice clip they can show everybody, and so they'll get to know who you are, and they'll sort of feel like, oh, I kind of owe this woman one. And so that doesn't immediately mean that you have a relationship, but it means you have a start of a relationship, and that they at least know who you are. So then that's the opportunity that once you do that, it's like, all right, well, how do you build on it? So maybe once you've interviewed a bunch of people, let's say you've interviewed 10 floral designers, at that point, you've got a pretty good quorum. You can say, you know what, I'm going to have a dinner party, and I'm going to invite, it's going to be an all floral designer dinner party, and we're just going to get together and talk and get to know each other and build a community. And probably, people, I do this for business authors here in New York. I have these business author dinners. People love it because they get to have an opportunity to network with their peers, and they will be grateful to you for providing that opportunity.
That's fantastic. She's actually in weight loss, so yeah, absolutely, all these things. And also, she can go to events, can't she? And get to know people at the event, network marketing, network events according to that area or whatever. So that's a really good way. So Dorie, so say for instance, you create an idea. How much of your own values, right, core values? First of all, how do you figure out what your core values are, what your principles are, and how do you align them with the brand that you're creating around your idea?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, when we think about core values, I have a friend who is leading a strategic planning retreat for a nonprofit that she's on the board of, and one of the standard things, I've done this, back in my days when I was doing a lot more hands-on consulting. I still do a little bit, but I started out really doing a ton of consulting work. And so, it's a common thing, right, is when you're having a strategic planning retreat, which you do every few years, you clarify, okay, what's our mission, what's our vision, what are our values, and then stemming from that, what are the priorities that we want to take on that are most relevant to those things. Yeah. As an individual, I feel like certainly it's important in general to know what your values are, but I also think that you don't necessarily need to articulate it the way that an entity does. The reason is that an entity, a nonprofit, it's got its executive director, it's got its staff members, it's got its board, it's got its advisory board. There are so many cooks in the kitchen that it would be really easy for one person to just sort of steer it off in one direction if he had an agenda. And so you need to have a common articulated framework so that everybody has a document to refer to say, now wait a minute, we shouldn't be focusing on this because really what we're about is this.
Right.
For an individual, I actually think that in some cases there's ways where people can overthink these things. And so, what are your values? I mean, I think that probably for me, the best way to think about our values, it's not necessarily, sitting down and making a list of like, oh, I believe in honesty and I believe in hard work. I mean, we all do, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I would suggest that people do, and when I give talks, I give a lot of keynote speeches. This is one of the things that I talk about sometimes. Is that what I actually think is really important for people to do is to write down their war stories. And what I mean by that is that for all of us, we have moments in our professional life or in our personal life, for that matter, but that really stand out. These are the kinds of things that, if you asked your partner or your close colleague or something, and you said to them, hey, if you're thinking about it, like stories that I tell a lot, like stories that I might have mentioned or alluded to like 3 or more times, what are they? And there's probably going to be a couple where it's like, oh my God, you always talk about the time that blah, blah, blah. And that's actually really useful information. That's actually crucial because clearly, if it's something that you're talking about and referring to regularly, it's serving this sort of formative role in your brain. It is something that is shaping your worldview. And getting in touch with that is actually really powerful because there's something there. There's a reason you're talking about it. And maybe it's because that was the moment when you really learned what teamwork was like, or when you really learned, you should only trust somebody if X, Y, and Z. But I think that actually might be the key thing, is understanding your war stories and extrapolating outward from that the principles and values that matter the most to you.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So anything that's kind of impacted you in a way and created a change in you at that time, it's something that's important to you, isn't it? So it's a good idea to identify that and lead with that kind of idea, those ideas, right?
For sure, yes.
I love that. George, this is a question that you have just asked. I think it's quite related to this. I mean, he said, how do I create my story? So I think this is exactly what you've just described, Dorie, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Take an afternoon at a cafe or something like that, and just write down your stories and begin to look for common patterns between them. Is it that a lot of the stories deal with certain themes about the importance of perseverance, or the importance of giving people opportunities to showing them enough trust so that they have room to prove themselves, or something like that. Finding those themes and commonalities can be quite valuable.
That's fantastic. Excellent. Well, Stella, thank you very much for joining the I Have a Dream show. You are fabulous. She comes to every show. She's from Spain, and now she's asking, okay, hold on, let me just read this. You guys, you have to keep your stories short, right? So I can read them live. I can't read essays. So she's basically saying that, how do I do this for network marketing? I think we're going to come to this story in a minute, where they are promoting the same products. Like, say, okay, all the network marketers on this show today, right? I know that you are doing the same products and services as other distributors, so you are part of a brand in a way already. How do you create a brand within a brand? Which is a very good question, Stella. I think it's related to this. Verify if this is what you mean, but yeah. How do you create your own voice inside a brand? That's what
Yeah, so it's a really great question, because Stella's right. I mean, if you are operating your own business that is independent of any other entity, you can certainly distinguish yourself based on your service offerings. I mean, I might be a web designer specializing in websites for authors, and you might be a web designer specializing in web design for sports teams. And so, okay, no problem. We all know who our clients are and who we should be targeting, et cetera, et cetera. But if you are, selling the same products, what do you do? So there's a couple of things that I would suggest. One is that even if the actual products are the same, you could distinguish based on target audiences that you're approaching. These are usually things, not exclusively, but usually things that are based on who you know or some element of yourself. So for instance, if, let's say you are a really big sports person and, every season you play a different sport. Well, maybe the way you differentiate yourself, I mean, everybody needs whatever shampoo or something like that, but or makeup or whatever, but because who is female athletes, maybe that is the target audience that you're going to be seeking, and so you'll have a disproportionate advantage there because you have the personal relationships and you can target it and relate to it. Oh, after a big game you're all sweaty, but you still want to look good when you're going out to party afterwards, so this is the perfect thing. Right. Whatever. So differentiation through target audience is one thing. The other thing, of course, is, and this is true for any salesperson really, is differentiating yourself on the strength of your relationship. And so this is where I think that something that a lot of people don't think of enough. The reason that they're buying is oftentimes you. I mean, sure, I might need shampoo. I mean, every human being needs shampoo, but it would probably, in some cases, just be easier for me to buy it at the drugstore, but I'm buying it through you because I like you, because I want to help you, etc. And so leveraging the strength of your relationship is really crucial. And so thinking through, I mean, I'm willing to bet that for almost any network marketer, they can really increase their business substantially. I mean, you can probably, just by doing this 10, 20%, whatever, just, kick it up by coming up with a really strategic contact management and follow-up system. Right. And so, for instance, one that I use is called Contactually, but there's other competitors as well. But for Contactually, they actually have a system where you can put all of your contacts into what they call buckets, and you can indicate, all right, these are people who are just acquaintances, so I don't need to talk to them that often. These are like my current customers, so I want to talk to them at least every month. These are prospective customers, so maybe I want to talk to them every 60 days. Whatever it is, you can specify, but it actually interfaces with your Gmail and or whatever your provider is, and it will cross-reference it. And so if I've said that I want to talk to Princess Fizz every 60 days, and it looks on my Gmail and it says, oh, nope, sorry, you haven't talked to her for 70 days, it's going to send me an email reminder, and it's going to say, Dorie, it's time to follow up. And so doing things like that so that you can keep in good touch and stay top of mind with people actually becomes a real competitive advantage.
So using things that will help you with your production and tools and people. This is another thing, Dorie, because I think a lot of people, when they start businesses, right, they don't seem to understand that tasks have value, according to how much you're worth. So, you've got the top producing tasks that will give the biggest value, and then you've got the low tasks that you can delegate. And people are afraid of delegating, maybe because they don't understand, or how do you work out? How do you personally work out what tasks are priority and which ones you should outsource according to the value that they provide?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, there's a few different frameworks that you can use for these things, but ultimately you should be guided, as they say, by highest and best use, right? So yeah. The question is, what is the thing that really only you can do? What is the thing that you do best and where you really excel and add personal value? I'm willing to bet that for most people who have some kind of a sales function, network marketers would be a key example, spending time face-to-face with your current clients or a strong prospective client, that is the most valuable thing. That's how you build a relationship. That's how you get the sale. Yeah. And so anything besides you spending time either on the phone or hopefully face-to-face with your clients, that takes less priority. And so from that, you could say, okay, well, different administrative tasks, okay, my bookkeeping, I guess I could have somebody else do that. Maybe content creation, blogging or whatever, maybe I could have somebody else do that, because the thing that I want to do is be face-to-face, and only I can do that. They're not gonna buy from me if I send them some intern that they don't know. Yeah. They're gonna buy from me because it's me. So that's one way to think of that. I mean, for me personally, I do a lot of writing and content creation. That's a big deal for me because a it's relatively easy for me compared to other people because I trained as a journalist, so I can do it pretty well. But also I think in terms of establishing my quote unquote thought leadership and getting my ideas out there, I don't. It's important for me not to be hiding behind a ghostwriter or something like that. Some people, if writing isn't your thing or you're not comfortable with it or if it takes you 100 hours, fine, no problem. But for me, I consider it a value that I do that,
Right.
um, whereas other things I can feel freer about outsourcing.
That's brilliant. I love that you mentioned that, because I think that's where you have to identify what is it that you can do the best that you can't delegate and only you can do it. And that's where your value is, when you provide that as a service. And so I love that. Oh my goodness. So there's so much more I want to cover, Dorie. My head's spinning right now. But more about you, Dorie. So as you are on the entrepreneurial path, I'm sure it's like a roller coaster, isn't it? Ups and downs, highs and lows. Can you identify a time where it was exceptionally challenging and you just thought, oh my goodness, I really can't do this anymore? What was that time like? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the hardest thing about entrepreneurship for a lot of people, and certainly this is the case for me as well,
Yeah,
is just that you have extreme variability in income.
yeah,
You're going to have some months that are incredibly lucrative, and you're going to have some months, where you just make zero,
yeah,
and that's just the way it rolls. And so it can be pretty alarming, especially because we are used to this model of steady jobs where you get a certain amount every month in your bank, and you know that you can count on that and plan for it. So for entrepreneurship, the swings can be a little bit discomforting. And so I remember in particular, my first book came out in the spring of 2013. And so leading up to that, for I'll say the last maybe 3 or 4 months of 2012, just for no reason at all that I could pinpoint, I just stopped getting business. Like nobody was calling. And I didn't know why. I didn't feel like I was doing anything different, but it was just like, nope, nothing happening. And it was an anomaly. I mean, that's really all it was. There was not a sort of strategic change that I had made or that was out there in the marketplace, but nonetheless, it was really disturbing. And so I figured, all right, I need to wait this out. And I figured that when my book came out, I would get a burst of publicity that would probably lead to new um, to new opportunities.
yeah.
But that was sort of a wager that I made. But I just said to myself, like, okay, I mean, clearly if this doesn't change, like even after your book comes out, I mean, you might have to reevaluate this because you got to do something to get money. But I just had to counsel myself to calm down and wait and see if things would turn, and they did. But sometimes you have to wait for a while, which is going back to our previous point. That's why it's really important to have a stockpile of cash so that you can wait out these anomalies.
Right, lovely, absolutely fabulous. And what about when? How about innovation? I mean, you launched an idea, but you need to kind of keep that idea alive with different, the movements happening in the environment around you or your workplace. How do you keep up with knowledge that you require, things that you don't know yet? How do you keep up with the super experts that seem to know it all? How do you align yourself with that type of knowledge so you are ready to make a change when you need to adapt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, one of the things that I did for a number of years in the early days of my business was I read classic business books really extensively. I mean, I do that less now because I've read a lot of them already.
Uh-huh.
But it was really important to me to kind of read all of the canonical works in the field. And so I would just, I mean, I was starting out, so I didn't have a ton of money. I would just get them all out of the library, and I'd read multiple books a week. Now that I'm actually an author, I'm like, no, don't use the library. Fuck the library. Buy them. But but at the time, I would use the library. But that was really helpful because I was able to get a lot of knowledge, and it gave me a good framework to be able to talk about things and think about things. These days, the way that I stay on top of things, I mean, for every field, people can, sort of find their own versions of this. But I mean, for me, what I do, I read the newspaper every day. I'm a big fan of that. And so for 60 or 90 minutes a day, I'll be reading the New York Times, so that I feel like that gives me a kind of broad overview of just trends and, things that are going on. I also read magazines very religiously, and that's another great source of information about what's happening, what's going on. I mean, the whole raison d'etre is to report on interesting new developments. So for me, I'm a subscriber to the ones I read are the New Yorker, Fast Company, Wired, and Inc. And those are really good. And I read a lot of other places online as well. And then another thing that I really like is there's a free daily email service called Smart Brief, and they have different editions you can sign up for. They have leadership and cybersecurity and this, that, and the other. For almost every field, they have something. I read Smart Brief on social media, and that I think is particularly useful because social media is it's at the forefront of how marketing is evolving. And so being aware of social media trends is fundamentally useful to what I do.
That's absolutely fantastic. And we've got a question coming in from George. This is a great question. Okay. Right, Dorie, he's asking about books, right? So launching books. I'm going to kind of put an edge on this question, George. Thank you for this question. But he's saying, did the book launches help you spread your idea? Meerkat people, the people that are asking what we're talking about, we're talking the people that have joined. Thank you so much for joining and retweeting this. Thank you, everybody. We're talking about how to come up with an idea and create a following around it. We've got lovely Dorie Clark here. She's an author and of Stand Out and Reinventing You. So she's on the I Have a Dream show. So Dorie, if you haven't got the skills, social skills in a way of communicating, do you think writing a book is a good way of getting your idea out and attracting people to your idea without, while you learn the social skills that are required?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, so I have a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, I definitely do think that writing your ideas and sharing them that way can be very valuable. I do a lot of writing about introversion. People seem really interested in that these days because, you have approximately half the population that's introverts. I'm an introvert. And a lot of people take that, I would say, as license to not do networking. They just say, oh, well, I can't do that. That's not for me. And so my goal is to try to pop that bubble a little bit and demystify it and say, no. You can't just say, oh, I don't like that. I'm not going to do it. That's shooting yourself in the foot. You need to do it. You just need to find a way that feels comfortable to you. Yes. And so anyway, sharing your ideas in print is actually a really good way of doing it. And so, I'll encourage people to blog or whatever, because that is, people don't see it that way necessarily, but it is a form of networking, because basically what it is it is giving people a reason to come to you. And that's actually the most powerful thing, is if they read your ideas and they like it, oh, well, they want to introduce themselves, they want to email you, they want to friend you on LinkedIn or whatever. And so that is a great form of networking for people that may not be so keen on plunging into a big networking event. So I think that that's powerful. One addendum to that I'll mention is that I, for many years, was under the impression, and I think this was true for a while, but again, lots of things are changing pretty fast, that you could write a book, and that book would serve as a tool, as a lever to get you to be better known. These days, it's not really so much that way if you are thinking about trying to get a commercially published book. Really what I discovered is that they don't want unknown people with great content. They could care less. What they want instead is someone who has a a quote unquote good platform
Uh,
that they can then sell to.
yeah.
And so what I realized in the lead up to my getting Reinventing You and Standout published was that in order to make myself credible as a possible candidate for a book being published, I needed to engage in a platform building campaign. So I would say that blogging prior to writing a book is usually the best action course for people who are interested in working with a mainstream publisher.
Do you know, I'm so glad you mentioned platform, because even the people here that are network marketers, I know there's quite a few people on the show today, they don't have to depend on the company that they are promoting. What if that company disappears? Where are you then? It's really important to have a platform online where your voice is heard. So regardless if they are still existing or not, you don't get affected, your work doesn't get affected, and you've created your own following that way. So I love that you mentioned, and platform can be different ways of blogging and podcasting, web TV shows like I have. There's lots of different ways of actually creating a platform online, and I love that. Thank you so much, Dorie, for mentioning that. Okay, so back to you. Okay, so tell me something about your mind. Where do you start in the day? I mean, how do you stay focused? How do you stay disciplined? How do you bring out the best in you? How do you measure that? How do you know that you've done your best each day?
That's such an interesting philosophical question. Wow. I think for me, what feels like a successful day is a day where I've been creating rather than just responding. So it feels like a win to me if there's some tangible product at the end of it. In my case, that's usually blog posts or writing chapters of a book or something like that. That's me putting new ideas out there that can be a contribution to help other people. So that's something that feels pretty good. In terms of staying productive and how do I stay focused and things like that.
Yeah.
At a really basic level, I mean, I try to. This for me is really the bounty of entrepreneurship, that you have the ability to listen to yourself and your body. I think in ways that just get stifled when you're working in a corporate environment that requires everyone to do certain things at the same time. So I think that being really attuned to when you are the most productive and working accordingly is really important. Just scheduling your creative work at the time when you're feeling your best is really good. Or knowing, for instance, some days, just because this is how life is, some days you won't sleep well and you'll wake up and you'll kind of feel a little, off. And so being able to say, all right, you know what? Today is a little bit of a loss for certain things, so I'm going to take all the boring stuff on my list that is not very creative but needs to happen anyway, and I'll just do that today so I can kind of, plow through and muddle through when I'm not at my best, so that I can make sure that when I'm trying to do something important like writing, that I am at my best. Or, not just things that I used to do when I was young and a little bit more stupid about things, like not waiting until like 6 o'clock to have lunch or something, just being a little smarter and more responsible about noticing and keeping myself running in a sane way.
That's brilliant. I love that. And ideas that you get in the day, like, most of my ideas come in the shower for some reason, right? When I'm very relaxed state.
Yeah.
And I don't have a pen on me at that time, right? So sometimes I've actually even got out of the shower to write it down.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing idea. And I didn't want to disappear, but it's amazing how it works, because you're in different states throughout the day. And some states kind of welcome these ideas. And some states don't. So do you use anything tool-wise? Do you capture those ideas? Is it important to capture those ideas and write them down and make a record of them, so when you come back you can actually build upon them?
Yeah, I think it is. Absolutely. I don't do anything really complicated. If I'm just out and about, I'll just use my smartphone. I'll write them into the notes function of my smartphone, or conversely, I will use the voice memo function and capture them that way. But yeah, otherwise they evaporate. and you're just left saying, oh, what was that idea? You know, if you take the attitude that like, oh, you'll really you'll always remember the really good ideas, like, no, actually you won't. So write them down, because otherwise you'll be kicking yourself later.
And to encourage ideas, guys, reading is very important. So really, expose yourself to related information all the time, so you can understand how other people think as well, and kind of get your muscles. It's like a practice, isn't it? It's practice of using your brain.
For sure.
How to use their brains? That's the problem. So use your brains, guys. Okay, excellent. So okay, we're coming up to the last few minutes. Dorie, it's been absolutely remarkable having you, and I can't wait to meet you in person and meet you at events. And is there anything that you're planning in UK or anything upcoming in Europe on your agenda?
Not immediately, but I will absolutely let you know when I do. I was able to be in Europe last year because the French edition of Reinventing You was released. So I'm hoping that that Standout might get some foreign language editions as well.
Right, excellent, absolutely. Well, I'll be the first to know, okay?
Excellent.
So, guys, you will know through me where Dorie is in Europe, so we'll stay connected. Okay, so last couple of things before we wrap up the show, Dorie. Clarity. I'm launching my book on clarity. I think it's so important. People do not have any idea. I think it doesn't matter what they want to do, but they just don't know what it is. They're not clear. The people that you work with, do you find this is a common problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people get hung up at different places in the process, but a big one is just being unsure of either what your goal is, or just at a very nascent stage, you might know what your goal is, but you have no idea what the first step is, and so you just say, well, that's complicated, so I'll deal with it later, and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah, so very being clear and asking the right questions, etc., is really important for an entrepreneur. Okay, so this show is about creating a change. The mission of the show is creating a change where you can, pick up something on the show that will create a change in your personal or your business life that will transcend to generations. So it's quite a big change that I want people to feel here. I'll be shocked if someone hasn't picked anything up right now. But Dorie, if you were asked this question on the street, what is that one thing I need to do to create a change in my business and personal life that will transcend to generations? What would you say that would be?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
A change that will transcend through generations. I think that that probably the one that I think would be most valuable. I mean, certainly it's valuable in the short term for business development, but I think it is valuable over the long term. Is content creation. Sharing your ideas, whether it's writing blog posts or writing books or doing a podcast or something like that. And of course, in the short term, the reason that it's valuable is that it's a great business development tool. It is a way to make yourself findable by like-minded people and draw people to you. They hear your ideas and they say, oh, I want more of that. That's fantastic. I love her perspective. But in the longer term, if you're actually thinking about generations, and you think about how cool would it be? I mean, this is stuff that you can't appreciate when you're 5 years old or 10 years old. But how cool would it be if there was a written record of your grandparents or your great-grandparents' lives and how they saw the world at that time? I mean, that would actually be pretty amazing. And in the past, it was just, maybe you'd find somebody's journal or something like that that's like impossible to read with their little old ancient handwriting. But if we start today doing that, and for people who want to have kids, if it's thinking about, oh, how do I get known by my children or my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren, not when they're 10 years old and it's like, oh yeah, I can buy you an ice cream cone, isn't that nice? But instead, if you want them as an adult to know you and to appreciate you and to think about, how cool it is to understand how somebody actually thought in the moment, that's a really good way to do it.
That's absolutely beautiful, Dorie. Oh my God, can I keep you? Can I keep you in here forever? It's just awesome. I just love love the ideas that you have in your brain, and it's just amazing. Right now, when I was 13, Dorie, I read. I'm a big fan of poetry, and the 12th century scholar Rumi. Guys, if you know who Rumi is, say yes. Rumi is a mystic of the 12th century. He wrote lots of poetry. He's quite famous in Western world now. But I read something. He said that everyone's made for a purpose, a particular work, and that work is put into your heart, and that desire to find out what that is being placed inside you. How do you wake that up? How did you find your purpose? Do you know your purpose? Are you living your purpose, or do you still need to find your purpose? What stage are you at?
So for me personally, I think that I feel like I may know my purpose now. I certainly didn't start out that way. I mean, much like with my careers, I feel like it's this process of just like, discovering it through discovering it through iteration, and just kind of plowing your way through it. I mean, the only way that you can get started realistically is to just find something that you're kind of interested in and just pursue that and see where it goes. Just go in the direction of something you think is cool, and then see where life and opportunity takes you with it. But for me, I think that probably the place where where now I would see a sense of purpose based, and I'm saying this retrospectively, based on the books that I've written and things like that, is in trying to help other people become aware of the contribution that they can make. What is your personal brand? What is the thing, the special sauce that you bring, and then get better at sharing that with the world, both feeling confident in sharing that with the world, and knowing tactically how to do it. Because there's a lot of people out there who are obviously very talented, who have lots of good ideas, but if nobody ever hears those ideas, or if nobody ever appreciates those ideas, then all right, what was the point? And so I want people to be able to actually have an impact, and to get accomplished the things they want to accomplish, to share the things that they have discovered, or that they're meant to share. By making it easier for them to know that they should be doing that, and to feel comfortable doing that, and to know how to do that.
That's absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And also, I think moving fast, Dorie, moving fast, picking up the pace a little bit, getting more experience, because the more faster you move, the more experience you get, and then also you grow quicker as well, and you can't figure out. Too many people get hung up, about, oh, that person said that, or this isn't right, or I'm too weak to do this, or negativity, and so much time gets wasted. Just go for it. If it doesn't work, move on. Next thing, move fast. I think that's something that I really like to encourage people to do. So I'm sure you've been a fast mover in your life, Dorie. But excellent. So as you are on the I Have a Dream show, I have to ask you to share your dream with the audience today.
Yes, certainly. So I would say that on a micro level, for me, my dream is so I've published 2 books now, Reinventing You and Standout, and so I'm getting excited about the possibility of doing a 3rd book. And so I guess my dream between now and the end of the year is that I would like to be able to sell the proposal for that, and to begin starting work on that, so I can learn about a new topic and dive in there. At a macro level, my dream is that I really do, as I was saying earlier, want to help people really feel empowered to be themselves, and to share their ideas, share their best ideas, and to do it in an authentic way. So, there's nothing I hate more than people who just feel so constrained somehow by what other people are going to think of them, or what they're supposed to be doing. That's the saddest thing in the world, because it's one thing, if you're trying and something isn't working, but it's a whole nother thing, and it's really tragic if you're holding yourself back. And so I want to be in a world where we don't have anyone who's holding themselves back, because to me that's just an utter waste.
That's absolutely beautiful. And what is the price of your dream, Dorie? What are you willing to do to achieve those dreams. Because I think when people have these amazing dreams, I mean, some dreams I've heard, they're like, wow, but they're not willing to pay the price for it, because every dream has a price that you have to pay as a you know, as a person that's made those dreams. You need to become a person to achieve them, right? So understanding the price that you need to pay, what is that?
Yeah, very interesting question. I mean, I think that to a certain extent, you know, you have to, if you're going to be excelling professionally and spending a lot of time doing that, which, you know, it is an investment. I mean, I want to try to fashion myself into being one of the top business thinkers, and so that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of travel, you know, a lot of time working. Certainly not everybody would necessarily be willing to do that. But I mean, at a really tactical level, there was a woman that I was involved with for a while, for about 2.5 years, and she was, I mean, there were other issues as well, but she was really hostile to my business travel schedule, and just felt really upset that she kept saying, like, oh, well, you know, the best times of your life are when you're, you know, on the road, and that's all you really care about is working, and, you know, we're, you know, so we're spending the best times of your life apart. And, you know, she was very, very highly critical of that. And so anyway, we broke up because I thought, you know what, I'm not going to spend, I mean, you know, I think she, I really cared about her a lot. She cared about me a lot. I think she would have liked to have gotten married, probably. But I thought, you know what? Who you marry is the most important decision that you make ever. The most important decision. And I'm not going to make the wrong choice. I am not going to choose poorly on this, and to choose somebody that wants to try to limit me and limit my potential future success. I want somebody who's going to be supportive of me for that. And if I can't have someone on board, it won't work.
Somebody that empowers you, you know, someone that comes into your life, you're already doing remarkable things, but that add that extra spark in your life that you just want to do more and more of it, you know. So very important. Anyone's about to get married, do not do it until you feel they're empowering you.
Yeah.
So, that's fantastic, Dorie. Dorie, thank you so much. I mean, how much can I thank you for your amazing contribution today? Everyone that's been on the show, they stayed up till now. You know, it's been over an hour. I want to congratulate you for doing that. You know, it shows that you want something. You're looking for something, and you know, I'm so pleased that I can serve you on your journey. But as a bonus for staying this long, we've got a wonderful bonus from Dorie. Dorie, is it a workbook? Can you just explain what the bonus is and where they can get that from?
Yes, absolutely. So I have, so my book, Stand Out, my most recent book, is really about how to come up with your own breakthrough idea and build a following around it. So for, you know, for any of you guys listening, presumably there's some degree of interest in this question of how do you really you know, stand out? How do you get known as being among the best in your field, the person that people want to work with or buy from? And so I created a workbook that is 42 pages. At the end of every section of Stand Out, I have a series of ask yourself questions. I compiled them together. It's 139 questions that walks you through step by step the process of discovering what is different and unique about you, how to turn that into an idea and concept that you become known for, and then how to gain public recognition around it. It's also very handsome because it was designed by the same book designers that did my book. So that is available for free, and for folks who are interested in downloading it, you can go to my website, dorieclark.com, which is DORIECLARK.com, and you can get the free 42-page workbook in your mailbox.
That's lovely, because a lot of people would want to know how to go forward, but they don't know the questions to ask. You know, that's really important, the right questions. So guys, this book is going to give you those questions to ask and form your idea and, you know, get it down on paper. This is so important. But thank you so much, Dorie. I'll put the link underneath the website. Dorie's books are available under the video, guys, on Meerkat. go to ihaveadreamshow.com/Dorie Clark, and I'll be sending out replays for the show as well, to remind you anything that you missed out, or that you want to share as well. There's a prize for sharing. Watch out for your email box and see what that is. But Dorie, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing yourself on the I Have a Dream show today. And I'll be definitely reaching out to you with the replay as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Dream big, take massive action. So one day I can bring you onto the I Have a Dream show and share your unique journey with the world. Thank you so much.